Sebastian's grandfather lived in the taiga, but he didn't just live there. He was a great man, a hereditary hunter. All the men in their family were hunters. They always lived near the taiga and were very close with nature. They respected and honored its laws. They were never greedy. They never took more from nature than their family needed to survive. And Old Man Fred wasn't any different. He didn't set traps, and when he got the animal, he always asked for its forgiveness and talked to the forest as if it were a person. Whenever they were out in the forest together, little Sebastian would ask his grandfather, "Grandpa, why are you talking to the forest? You know it's not alive, so it won't answer." The old man would only smile through his gray mustache and answer him, "You are mistaken, son. The forest is alive. Look around you. What do you see?" "Well, I see trees, bushes, grass," the boy would start. "The birds are flying over there, and the ants are crawling. I also know that different animals live here." Fred would sit down on a tree stump and take out a thermos full of tea from his backpack. He would cut bread, vegetables, get the salt, then pass the snack to little Sebastian, and continue with his questions. "Well, and what do you hear? Take a listen." The boy would close his eyes again and listen. "The birds are singing. The wind is rustling. The branches are moving." "Exactly." The grandfather would smile happily. "Now close your eyes again and listen very carefully." "What am I supposed to hear now?" Sebastian never ceased to wonder. "The forest breathing. Try to feel its breath as your own, as if you have become the forest," the old man would say. The grandson would close his eyes again, wrinkle his forehead, and listen to the forest breathing. But instead, he would only hear his grandfather's quiet laughter. "Don't strain yourself too much." He'd affectionately stroke his grandson's head. "It seems like you're about to burst." The boy would laugh happily. "Okay, son, let's go home. Your grandma must be getting worried. You'll try again next time." Old Man Fred got up, took the leftovers and buried them under the bush. Then he put the wrappers and other trash in a bag. Every time they came to the forest, the grandfather taught his grandson how to behave properly, how to navigate, and which paths to take. He explained how to recognize the animal tracks and how to find his way home if he suddenly got lost. He told the boy what animals and birds live next to people, about their habits, and even their characters. The grandson listened attentively to the old man and was very surprised at how much he knew, and gradually, Fred's love for nature rubbed off on the boy. Sebastian simply adored the forest and all of its inhabitants. He could sit in silence for hours watching nature. Time passed. Sebastian finished school and served in the army. He was always drawn to his native land, and that summer he had a great opportunity to visit the village. It felt empty and lonely after his grandparents passed away, but at least the smell of the old house evoked warm memories and soothed the soul. That time of year was very hot and dry in the taiga regions, and the fires raged everywhere. The young man was devastated to see his childhood home, his favorite centuries-old forests, get incinerated by fire. And what about the animals? Sebastian thought to himself. They have it the worst. The young man couldn't sit by. Every day he'd go to the most remote parts of the forest in his pickup truck and comb the area, hoping to somehow help the inhabitants of the forest frightened by the evil elements. One of those days, Sebastian went to the far shore of a small lake. Hidden in the very depths of the forest, his path lay where the other people rarely set foot. Suddenly, a sound caught his attention. It was either a groan or a cry. At the edge of a small clearing, Sebastian noticed a family of wolves. The gray predator was lying motionless, and two tiny wolf pups were fussing around beside her. The wolf's paws were burned. She was laying down and moaning softly, trembling with her whole large body. Once in a while, apparently the predator managed to bring her offspring to the lake, away from the fire, but the wounds were too severe for her to keep going further. Sebastian was amazed by the sight. He loved all animals, but he treated wolves with special reverence. He used to read a lot about these creatures and was always indignant at how many lies they wrote about these amazing animals. Wolf cruelty and bloodlust weren't just exaggerated, but had actually nothing to do with these animals at all. Even more so, the way their social life is arranged, as well as the way they take care of their offspring, could be envied even by people. The wounded she-wolf was moaning quietly and looked at the man. Terrible pain was reflected in the eyes of the poor animal, which immediately made the young man feel very sorry for her. Sebastian started carefully approaching the animal, step by step, very slowly, trying to breathe deeply in order to calm himself and not let the animals feel his tension. Coming closer, the man slowly knelt down next to the pups, while they started whining and wagging their tails joyfully. The mother wasn't showing any aggression either. Apparently, she was hoping the man would help them because she didn't really have another option anymore. The man brought his car closer and carefully loaded the wolf family in it. Back home, Sebastian was in for new but pleasant responsibilities. Every day, he dressed the predator's wounds. He washed them and put on the healing ointment. He fed the pups with milk and meat broth, and also played with them in the yard while their mother wolf regained her strength and learned to walk again. The young man grew attached to his guests, and they grew attached to him. But 2 months later, it was time for them to leave. When the predator's paws were completely healed, she went into the forest with her pups and never returned. It seemed that they would never meet again, and they wouldn't have if it weren't for an unexpected twist of fate. It was early spring. Sebastian was planning on leaving the village soon. That day, he decided to visit the lake in the depths of the forest to take some pictures as a keepsake. The lake was quite deep, hidden from view. Only the fishermen went there, and only those who knew those special places well and weren't afraid of getting lost. The man set up his tripod, attached the camera, and was admiring the surrounding nature. Each season, the lake revealed its beauty in a completely different way. In summer, it was buried in greenery, hiding in the dense forest thickets. But now, the mirror surface was covered with ice and powdered with snow, on which footprints of various animals were clearly visible. Sebastian suddenly decided to go out on the ice to cross to the other side of the lake, to take pictures and come back. The man stepped onto the lake and started shooting. The ice seemed to be strong, only occasionally cracking slightly under his feet. The man didn't even notice as he reached the middle of the lake, when suddenly, the ice crackled loudly under his feet, and he was terrified to realize that he was falling under it. The camera hit the ice and flew far to the side. He tried to grab onto something, but the edges of the ice were very slippery, and Sebastian immediately went underwater. His clothes instantly soaked in icy water and started pulling him down. The man panicked and started screaming loudly, but all he could hear in response was the echo of his own voice. His hands and legs started cramping from the cold. Sebastian tried to escape from the ice captivity, but he was quickly losing strength. It seemed that he was about to lose consciousness. The image of his grandfather suddenly appeared before his eyes. He looked just as he did when the man was little. Only a person who treats the forest with respect deserves to be respected back. Don't offend the forest, and it will never offend you. Help as much as you can, and someday, the forest will help you too. We are part of this world, and when we realize it, our life will be completely different. Always remember this, son. Grandpa! Sebastian barely managed to whisper with his numb lips. I remember! The vision disappeared, and the man's mind went dizzy. His hands were weakening, his body was fettered from the cold. A few more seconds and he would be gone. But suddenly, Sebastian saw some gray shadows come out of the forest and start walking towards him. Help! The man exhaled with all of his might, or maybe he just thought he did. One shadow leaned over the man, and he realized it was a wolf. The animal looked directly into his eyes, then turned and growled softly. The man could have sworn that the animal said something to the pack, because a few more shadows cautiously approached the drowning man. The gray predator grabbed Sebastian's jacket with her teeth and started slowly pulling him out of the water. Two young wolves were ready to help their mother if need be, Standing by her side, the man immediately perked up, grabbed the ice with his hands, and began to crawl out following the movements of the animal. The she-wolf slowly backed away, pulling the man out. Finally, Sebastian was out on the surface, unable to believe his luck. The wolf sat nearby and carefully looked at the man. He recognized the pack as his old friends, whom he had helped not so long ago. "Thank you, dear," Sebastian whispered softly. The she-wolf got up, stretched, and yawned, revealing her impressive fangs. Then she looked the man straight in the eyes as if to say, "Don't be so stupid again," and quickly disappeared into the thickets with her family. Sebastian followed them with his eyes, got up and went home. He sat by the fireplace for a long time, warming himself and listening to the crunching sounds of the fresh firewood. The man sighed and decided that losing his camera wasn't the worst thing that could have happened that day, although the fact he didn't get to film his rescue was very upsetting. Maybe it's for the best though, Sebastian thought. Everything that happened will remain between us. Thank you, kind animals. You saved my life. I certainly wouldn't have made it without you, the man said, and it seemed that the wind brought him a distant wolf howl in response.